All right, looks like it's up and running. Everybody, it's Jason from Ronin Bodyboards doing another Boog Chat. Looks like we got somebody here already, which is cool. Um, Looks like a microphone, everything's working fine. So, geez, man, the surf's been nuts here. I think I have like 6 days in a row now. So, yeah, I've been surfing my brains out. It was four hours in the water yesterday and like 3 today. Super fun. Sandbars are finally starting to work at right out the beach break out in front of my house. So it's been offshore and 65, 70 degrees and just beautiful mornings. It's been super fun. So many good waves in the last 2 days. Crazy. I mean, if I'm going to be in the water for 4 hours, I'm not going to waste my time unless that like 4 hours of my day, unless the waves are really good. So hello to everybody, whoever's here. Yeah, so just like I said, I've been surfing my brains out. It was kind of a weird, stormy January. I know I haven't done one of these in about a month now. Sorry about that, but I'm going to get back into them. Try to do at least one or two a month for sure. Every week, we'll see if I do them every week. But I definitely need to get through all my personal boards and then attack topics after that. Hey, Nick. Good to see you, buddy. So yeah, shoot, I've just been cranking on boards since the last one, and maybe I'll dive into my next few personal boards. I think I left off with like number 107. It was the black and white 3 to 6 channel board on the last one. So after that, like I said, most of the boards after that are pretty much the same dimensionally, and channels are pretty going to be a lot real similar to, especially dimensionally. I found the dimensions I like, and I for my prone board. So after 107, I rode 107 for quite a while. The next board I built was 175, and you can see it's still leashed up here. Tangled up. It's a 42-inch polypro single stringer mesh bottom, all yellow and black. Has my all the contours, channeled rails. You can see the channeled out rails on this. This one was kind of lighter on the channeled rails. It wasn't super heavy. It has the deck traction bumps, but you can see I've got some elbow creasing in it and stuff. This board, this had to have gone to Hawaii at least once, and I rode it around home for quite a while. So it's 3 to 6 channel. So like I said, my 3 to 6, they start off at 3 in the front part of the board, and then they fade out to the 6 out the tail. And this is a 3 to 6 scallop tail. There's like 3 scallops on the top and then 6 on the bottom. Hey, and so yeah, so that nose bulbs also on this. But other than that, I mean, it's basically like I said, a lot of my boards are going to be looking kind of the same now because I really found the setup I like in my personal board. So. Gosh, that's single stringer. It's a great board. I rode the heck out of it. I still have it leashed up, so I mean, I'll even ride that board every once in a while. Even still, it's still rideable. It's just a little tired. It's lost a little bit of its rigidity just because it's been creased just a little bit, and I rode the heck out of it. So, so yeah, that board is just standard for me. It's just standard-ish. Only person, maybe Nick, is that you out there still, or? Nobody else is really here today. I'm going to be struggling for questions. So I guess about it that around that time is I've been made a few mini boards and stuff, and I know we're going to talk more about mini boards in this one later on. But I figured I'd made a few mini boards and I had a template and everything, and so I figured it's time for me to figure out, make a mini board and see what it's all about. So my little mini board is it's a little bit narrower than the ones I'm making now. It's the old mini template that I had, and I want to say this one's only 22 inches. It's not even 24. Like I'm doing most of them 24 these days. But it's a full 3. It's 3 channel mesh bottom. I think this does have a stringer in it. Just a 3 scallop with a thumb groove all the way around. And on my normal contours, these would be like hip grooves out here on a big board. But oddly enough, they work kind of interesting because when you get your thumb wrap anywhere where you're holding on to up and around the nose, but your other hand you're going to drop down, and it seems like you get a better grip because your palm is all in this little groove back here. Sometimes when you're holding on, instead of just a thumb groove, it kind of when it widens out when you can hold on, and it's just maybe a better grip. And on the other side, it depending on how long your arm is, sometimes you can almost get your elbow into the top part of this little hole right here, and it gives you a little bit more space for your elbow than just a little thumb groove. So I don't know. I've been experimenting with contours on the minis, but I really like the all the way around thumb groove and then fading out into the tail. It's pretty cool. Yeah. The thumb grooves are just key, man. Like it really on a mini, Nick. It's just the thumb grooves just really provide a more positive grip, and your thumbs don't slip off the edge of the board, and you're trying to hold onto the board. So yeah, it's a fun board. I rode it, paddled around with it a little bit out front here. It's my beach break out here. It's a very gentle sloping beach most of the time. So I don't really get, these things are really fun in shore break when you're not really doing a lot of paddling. But my beach, man, it's a 100-yard paddle sometimes to get to the outside. And with a mini board, it's a long swim with the mini board. So it's nice to have a little bit more. These things are a heck of a lot of fun in the shore break, though. So just pull in and get inside these little tiny little barrels and get annihilated. It's super fun, I'm sure. I'm not much of a shore break rider myself. I'm not into getting annihilated. I like to ride waves, not just pull into closeouts. I like closeouts, don't get me wrong, but I want a length of a ride most of the time. Anyway, I played around with this. What I would do with this is I'd ride it with my Tombstone board, number 26. It's probably a few Boog Chats back, but my Tombstone, I never leashed my Tombstone, so it doesn't have a leash on it. So what I would do is put this thing on the deck of my Tombstone, go out, paddle out with both boards, and then catch the wave on my Tombstone because it's a heck of a lot easier to catch a wave on a bigger board. I'd get going on that, and then I just transfer. Once I had all the speed from the Tombstone, I just ditch the Tombstone, hold on to this, and slide off, and then ride the mini board and through with it's like a board transfer from the Tombstone and then to this thing. I had a couple fun days doing that. Only thing is then once you're done with this, the ride of this, and then you're like, turn around and you're like, okay, well, where'd the Tombstone go? You're always chasing the other board around, but it sure is a heck of a lot of fun. At least at my beach, it's a lot of swimming. I guess if you were doing it, closer to shore, it wouldn't be quite as much of a paddling around. But my beach, you do a lot of paddling, chasing your other board. It's a lot of exercise. But that's what we're out there to do, is have fun and exercise. So it looks like I got another person here. If anybody's got any questions, fire away. Comments, whatever. So yeah, this one doesn't have any nose bulbs on it. That's one thing I kind of miss on this, is just having a little bit of the little slick bulb on the underside. We sure wish I would have put them on here. And I usually put them on all the ones I'm making nowadays. Except for the Tombstones, that we'll get into the minis in a little bit here. So that was my Tombstone. I made it around the same time as I had made the 175 orange and black board I just showed you. So after that, like I said, that one board made to Hawaii and back a few times, but I knew I was going to be taking another trip to Hawaii, and I had some ideas about a warm water board. And I've talked a little bit about this board, maybe in the last Boog Chat or before that, but I really wanted taking my boards that I usually ride here to Hawaii. Having just a single stringer with mesh wasn't enough. That's what I was noticing, is that when I get into the warmer waters, my boards would just get too flexy and too what I call like a wet noodle. They're just too flexy, and I wanted it to be a little bit more rigid, like how the board would perform at home. So there was a couple things that I wanted to experiment with the warm water board. Is I wanted a little bit more stiffness, and I also noticed that because when I'm at home, I'm always wearing a hooded 5.4 wetsuit. Like it's super thick. There's a lot of rubber, and it's super buoyant. And so when I'm home, I notice it, like for duck diving and stuff like that. When you go to duck dive here, it's a lot harder to get down and stay down. You just tend to pop up faster because you have all that neoprene on. I had my lower volume board. I hope I'm still okay. It looks like it's all right. I might have glitched a little bit there. But so when I take my lower volume boards that I ride at home, and over there, I could duck dive really good, and I could stay down, and notice I could kick and stay under the water a lot longer because I didn't have all the neoprene on, and I had and the board. But see, also when I'm going to paddle, like just paddling around, I noticed that I was sinking lower in the water just because I didn't have all the neoprene, adding all the little bit of extra fluke. So I realized that, not only did I want more in my warm water prototype board, I wanted it to be stiffer and I wanted it to have more buoyancy. Those are the two main things that I kind of wanted into it. So I had been kicking around some ideas about doing a step top and a step bottom board to try to put more, volume. And I wanted a, thicker board for more volume. So it would compensate for me not wearing a wetsuit. But I like the feeling of thinner rails in my hands. It's one of the main things I wanted to get in there too. It's like I wanted to add buoyancy, but I didn't really want to add rail thickness. I wanted to keep my rails feeling like my normal thinner boards at around 2 1/16. But I wanted more. How could I put more volume into the board but still have the same rail feel in my hands? So the way I came up with this, and I explained a little bit of this stuff on the last Boog Chat. But so board 212 is the next one in the chain, and that's this board. And so what you can see on this board, what it is it has a step deck, and you can kind of see it here. I mean, obviously it has a center contour here, but this whole center contour is an 1/8 inch thicker than the outside of the rails. Like all of the outside part, all the way around the center contour is all knocked down 1/8 of an inch. And then you take all the normal deck contours and you sink those down another 1/8 of an inch. And then you go and you even hog out some of the hip grooves back in here for even more out. But all the time, the whole center part of like the board is all an 1/8 inch thicker, but all this other stuff is all knocked down at various levels depending on where it's at in the board. So that added an 1/8 inch of thickness all through the deck of the board to add more volume. And then on the bottom side, this is I took a really long quad channel. Basically the channels go all the way up into back where the kind of like the nose cut. This is the nose cut, right? So it basically took them almost up into the nose cut. And this also, if you look at it, the whole two center channels have the same theory as the top. Is that before I cut the channels into the board, I knocked all the outside parts down 1/8 of an inch, leaving the center part of the board 1/8 inch thicker, right? So then it was everything was flat. There were flat surfaces like that. And then I carved the channels into all that. So basically this board is like in the thickest spots, it's a 1/4 inch thicker than the outside of the rails. So it's kind of hard to see in the video here, but that's the theory about how to put the volume into the board, but still have the same rail thickness as my other boards. That's the ideas that I came up with this one. And it has channeled rails, and like I said, as far as the stiffness goes, now this board, I've had some issues with water getting in my stringers. I know this, and there's people out there that have commented and sent me messages saying, "Hey, I got water slushing around my stringer." It happens, man. I do the best I can to get those things sealed up, but water always wins, man. It's going to find its way into the board. If it gets into the core, eventually it's going to find its way into the stringer. It's just the nature of it. And I always thought it would be kind of fun. And I know I've talked a little bit about different stringer types and things like this before in these Boog Chats, but instead of having a hollow tube stringer, one of the things I was thinking about, well, that hollow cavity is always where the water ends up in, right? So I'm just going for some stringer pieces here. Just bear with me. So, even though this isn't hollow because it has the end caps that I put on the end caps to seal this off, this is a hollow tube, right? 3/4 inch hollow tube. This is basically what I put inside every single board I make these days. They're capped off with these plastic caps that are like triple baffled like an earplug. So these things push into the end of the pipe and seal everything off. And I've done dunk tests with this underwater for like 4 hours, just pushed it underwater and held it. And it did not get water inside of it. But I still sometimes have heard from people, even with this kind of the setup, that sometimes water can still find its way in. But okay, so and so instead of having a hollow tube, you can see this end's not that. So you can see it's kind of a thin wall tube, right? This is the standard stringer I put in all my boards. Now I know there's a lot of companies out there that don't use 3/4 inch diameter; they use a 1/2 inch diameter stringers. And I've used some 1/2 inch diameter stringers and boards too. It's just I offer a range of stuff, but Most people are using 1/2 inch, and all my boards are standard with 3/4. That's one of the big difference with the stringers that I put in boards versus some of the other brands out there, is that I think a lot of guys are using 1/2 inch stringers, and I use 3/4. But regardless, they're both hollow tubes, right? So if water's getting in, it can get inside the hollow tube. But what if instead of using a hollow tube, you start, what if you use like a solid rod? That's what I put in the other board. And these are epoxy fiberglass. They're not carbon fiber. They're just it's a blend of a fiberglass and epoxy, and that's how they extrude all these the pipes out. But I through my stringer manufacturer, I can get other diameters of stringers, and so I mean, these are a few of the ones that I've done, and what's in that board is this stringer. It's a 3/8 inch solid carbon fiber. So this thing, it's incredibly, for how small and thin it is. It's like, as far as if you had a longer piece and we're flexing it, it flexes almost it's a little bit more flexy than my 3/4 inch stringer, just a little bit. But it has this killer snap to it. Like it bends, but it pops back super fast. These stringers are really, really nice. So, but I knew that one of them wasn't going to be enough, right? So I did with my warm water board is I took 3 of these. So there's three carbon fiber solid rod stringers in this board, basically on the channel, and it's right through here. Full length stringers in this board. So it has a triple stringer, but these stringers, like I said, they're less flexy than they're more flexy than my 3/4 inch stringers. So what you get is a stiffer board because there's 3 of them, but they're all flexy. It's just a more spread out system throughout the board, and so it's definitely stiffer. And I mean, I love the pop and snap of this board in Hawaii. It's been to Hawaii twice in my last 2 trips. I love the board in Hawaii. I like I said, I mentioned this the last time, and I just wish the thing had a 3 to 6 bottom on it instead of the quad with the stuff. I realized that it tracks really good and it holds its line really good, but it gets a little weird in spins and stuff because the channels are so far up into the nose. I like stuff I touched on this in the last Boog Chat. I like things that are a little bit smoother and stuff through the nose. I don't like to take the channels up into the nose because I like to spin. I don't want anything catching or sticking when I'm spinning up on the nose. So yeah, man, I really do love this board. I think it's super cut. I mean, there's a lot of cool things with this, with the step deck, step bottom, channel rails, solid carbon fiber stringers. I'd also, I put little nose dents up here. You can kind of see right up into the nose. So basically, not only does it have slick bulbs on this, and this one has a light deck bulbs up in here too on the corners, but you also get this little like a nose dent. So you're like basically your index finger kind of almost drops into that little dent up on the nose. So it's an interesting grab on the nose. But gosh, I really do love this board. I just scored some absolutely great waves with this thing in Hawaii last year. So like I said, I've been riding the other orange and black board for quite a while. So that was like 175, right? So the orange and black board was my main board I was riding at home for a long time. And so from 175, I built 212, but I never really rode the warm water board at home. I'd always just save that for my Hawaii trips. Looks like we have 3 people here. If anybody has any questions, fire away. But I knew that, and so what I would, my next board was, the next board's 272. So it was almost 100 boards later. I rode that orange board for quite a long time. It was just a great board. It lasted for damn near a year, and I go a lot. So it's a lot of sessions on that board. But now by this time, by the late 100s and into 200s, I was starting to get some requests for rounded rail, one-piece rail boards, and I'd done a few here and there for some people. But I to be honest, I'd never ever ridden one. So I was like, man, I need to build myself a rounded rail board, and just so I have one in my quiver of boards, and I can go out and ride it. And I can see what all the fuss is about these rounded rails. Obviously they're most known on the Ben boards. Ben Severson's board has the rounded one-piece type rail instead of being a stacked up double rail and rolled over chine like we do on most bodyboards. This is a whole other way, a system of how things laminate together and everything. I mean, it's a whole different set of steps almost in how you stack the materials up on a rounded rail board, how the bend boards are made. But with the modern materials and the way that I build boards, I had to do things just a little bit different because of the deck skin backing that I use. I didn't want to see that deck skin backing on a finished board. It has to be all sealed up. And so, yeah, my boards, you go slick side, then you go deck, and then you stack the rails on. That's just how I need to build my boards. With those traditional rounded rail boards, the bend, what they do is they do the slick, and then they put the rails on, and then they laminate the deck over that. So it's a different stack on the top edge of the board. So like I said, the rails go on, the bottom slick goes on, the rails go on, and then you're basically putting the skin over the top of that rail edge instead of it being exposed. And so anyway, I can't really do that the way I build boards, the Polypro boards I build, is because I have that deck skin backing, and I didn't want to see that line. So if I was to do that and laminate my skin on top of the rail, there's some construction problems with that. So this board is the one that I built. It's a 272. It's a 3-to-6 nose bulbs, but it has, like I said, it has the rounded one-piece rail. So basically, when I say one piece, it means there's one piece that gets put all the way around, and then the whole thing is kind of rounded off, right? There's no real sharp edge or any kind of thing, because it's all one rounded piece of skin that goes up and over the rails, right? I do put a pinstripe on mine too. So basically, I gotta put this pinstripe on and then put this rail on over top of it, right? So you get a pinstripe line on the bottom, but when you get around to the deck side, you don't really see that pinstripe because it all gets sealed up when you round this piece over. Man, I really love this board. It's leash, so obviously I'm still riding it. This is basically my B board right now. I have my main boards that I ride, and then this has kind of been my B board since I built it. So it's always just kind of my backup board for home. I'll ride it at least once a month, probably. And it's amazing, man. I really do think there is something to these rounded rails. They're so glidey and flowy on a wave. Slick mash single stringer. So, but yeah, man, we put the thing on rail, and it cuts through the water differently than like the channeled rails that I usually ride. Looney, yeah, definitely. I did one slick rail board as a prototype. I rode it a few times, and then I passed it down to the line to a few riders. I have no idea where that board's at. It just got passed around like a yeah. I can't say it in the YouTube video, but yeah, it got passed around to a few of the different riders. It went to Jim Ledbetter and went up through the Bay Area. It might have made it to Hawaii. I'm not real sure where it's at. But I wanted to test it out and ride it. It was a slick rail board. It went great, man. The problem is there's some durability issues with those slick rails. They're super delicate, man. They're gonna ding and delam super easy. You got to be so careful with those boards. I mean, it's a cool thing, but it's not, and not to mention it almost eats up rails, because when you go to put the rail piece on, you can't manipulate the straight piece. It rounds, right? So what happens is you need when you go to cut the pieces of slick you're going to put on the rails, you can't just cut straight pieces like you can with foam and then manipulate it into the curves. You got to cut it to the profile of the curve, and that because you're going to cut it out of a big sheet of slick. And so it takes more material because you got to cut those arcs into the pieces, the rail pieces you're going to put on. So like I said, it uses a half a slick just to do 2 rails. And if you don't put it on right and it gets a little bit out of line, you just can't correct it. It's super, super tricky doing it. And then, like I said, they have a tendency like down at like on the very rail edges, because that you just got a hard piece of slick and then it's back with a piece of foam. It separates, man. If you're not super careful with all the edges and the corners of it, they just ding and delam real quick. But it was a pretty fast board, I'll give it that. But yeah, so I have done a slick rail board, just one, and I don't know that I'll do anymore. Like I said, it's kind of a waste of material, and I can't use Surlyn. I have to use HDPE for the slick pieces. So yeah, HEP is just a cheaper version of bottom slick. Surlyn is what I use for all of my boards. I mean, I do have some HDPE bottom slick, but I just don't make PE boards or HDPE bottom slicks. I just think they're inferior, and I'll probably get into that with the next board I'm going to show you out of my quiver. So like I said, this is 272. It's still like it's my number 2 board. I still ride it all the time. Fun board, super fun board. Yeah, so said I actually rode that 272 board for a while, but right around that time I'd also gotten wanted to experiment. I had a chance to experiment with some modern what they call Arcel, right? So Arcel foam or core material, it's kind of held a pretty high regard in history, just because it's so light, and I never got to ride an old school Arcel board. All I've seen is this modern stuff that I got a chance to buy a few pieces of it. So I wanted to experiment with it. Is it hard to? Yeah, Looney's asking, is it hard to seal slicks as or else? You're talking about like maybe rolling the edges of the around that slick. It does get a little bit hard if you're talking about when you're heat gunning and you're sealing the edges that you cut with the knife. Yeah, it gets a little tricky just because the foam will when you're heating the foam and then rolling it tends to shrink just a little bit. But the thing is if you have a hard Surlyn edge, that Surlyn's not shrinking, so you only get 1 or 2 passes on it, and it's got to be sealed. And if it's not rolled properly, it is a little tricky rolling and sealing all the edges around that stuff. But yeah, now if you're talking about how you stick it to the board, that's a whole nother thing. Like I said, you got to think about the sandwich of the types of materials you have. You're going to usually have an inner rail in the situation, no matter what. Yeah, they're really that's why we don't see them. Is they're a pain in the ass to build, and they lead to a lot of customer service issues, and manufacturers don't want to deal with the customer service issues because you're going to have DLAMs and you're going to deal with people with a disappointed customer. They expect something that's bulletproof, and that type of construction just isn't bulletproof. There are flaws to it because it's so fragile. It's cool. I mean, if you want to baby that board and make sure you take care of the edges and the rails, it can be a cool, fun board and a cool experience to ride. But most people aren't that careful with their stuff. They just chuck and huck things around and throw it in the back of their truck, or set it down on its tail or store it on its tail, or there's just things. People are a little careless sometimes with their boards, and that leads to DLAMs and things. And like I said, with those rails, they're so delicate. So as far as HDP goes, I really think it is. I'm getting back to Arcel. So I got a chance to build or get some Arcel core, and I never really made any of the boards or sold them to customers. I just wanted to build myself one. I had like 3 pieces of it. So I wanted to build an Arcel board for myself and experiment with the core. And the modern Arcel, it's super light. Okay, so now Arcel, it's like Arcel's like a trade name or a name for a type of foam, but it is a type of foam. So what the foam is it's PE, polyethylene, and it's EPS. So it's styrofoam. Styrofoam and PE mixed is basically what the modern Arcels are. They're called you can look it up on the internet. It's iFoam out of a Southern California foam distributor. So that you can get a foam called iFoam. And I know some other brands call it some different names. They buy it. It is iFoam. That's what it is when you buy it from the distributor. But it is what people call the modern Arcel because it's a blend of PE and EPS. So anyway, it's really light. It's got great snap. I mean, it has some really cool characteristics to the foam, but the problem is it has no memory. It's dense and it doesn't. I mean, I've showed a few of the Boog Chats I've done in the past. I pulled the piece out, just a raw piece of it. You just sink your fingers into it and then like let off. And in most like polypropylene or polyethylene, it'll come back to its shape, right? This stuff, you dent it and it doesn't come back. It's got no memory. So it crushes and it doesn't come back. That's one of the flaws with it for me in my mind. I mean, like I said, I built this board. So, I got a little nostalgic. It'd been a while. I've been riding my 3 to 6s a lot. And I was like, oh man, I want to go back and just do it because I knew I wanted to experiment with a core that I'd never ridden. but I wanted a design with channel and tail design that I was super familiar with, and that was just a straight 3-channel. So that's what this board is. It's a 3-channel single stringer. There's no mesh on this. Like I said, it's a modern R-cell core. It's one of the few boards I actually put some stickers on, but half of them tore off because they just over time just came off. You know, I put them on as good as I can, but you know, you ride a lot, it's gonna they peel off. Anyway, so diamond nose, slick bulbs, 3-channel, 3-scallop tail. So on the deck side, I put my normal contours. You can see this board it's trashed. I had this board I rode it for maybe 2 months, and you can see all the elbow dents and everything that are all in the deck of this board. It's just crazy. When I built it, I knew it was going to have some denting issues because I held the foam enough to know and saw that it wasn't going to rebound. I knew I was going to have denting issues, so I tried to put these little pads in also right around my elbow spots, thinking, man, I'm just going to put an extra layer of pad in there, which is basically just an extra layer of deck skin underneath all of these 2 spots, thinking I could need a little bit more cushioning so that way I wouldn't get as much elbow denting in there. But as you can see, it's just absolutely creased to hell in no time. I got the craziest elbow creases in this thing. It's just nuts, and it's got really doesn't have a whole lot of life left in it after 2 or 3 months. I was really disappointed with the core quality, and that's why I've never really built any. Also, it's DPE bottom slick, like what I was talking about with the rails before. Because my Surlyn, the Surlyn bottom slick it comes back with polypropylene, so that way I can stick to polypropylene cores very easily. But the problem is that this core is a PE core based core. EPS with styrofoam is still kind of a PE based foam, so that polypropylene backed Surlyn will not stick to this just with heat. So I had to use the HDPE that I had because it's backed just with polyethylene foam. So polyethylene foam will bond to polyethylene foam or the R-cell just with heat. You don't need any kind of adhesives or anything. So that's why I decided to use. And I was thinking that, and it's also the HDPE is a little bit stiffer and not as flexible as Surlyn. That's another good thing about Surlyn is it just has more flex to it, and it's not as rigid. But for this board, I knew it was going to have flex issues and whatnot, and to have a little bit stiffer bottom, there was something to it. I was like, man, maybe I should probably do that because I knew I didn't have mesh on it. It was just a single stringer. It's just got all kinds of problems. I'm glad I never really. I still have one piece of this core left, and I think I sent the 3rd piece to Andrew back east. I think he got the 3rd piece. It's just because I wasn't really interested in making any more boards. Once I saw how this held up, I was just like, nah, So anyway, it was a fun experiment, but kind of, you never know until you try, and you got to try things to know whether it's good or bad or something. So I'm glad I tried, but it is what it is. Yeah, I know. That's the thing is when you get them and they're brand new, Looney, like the board was great when it was brand new. The first like 3 or 4 sessions on it went great, but it broke down so fast. Like it started getting all the elbow dents in it, and then it started getting elbow creases right after that. It wasn't too long. Within the first couple of weeks, it was already creased, and it just went downhill from there. So. And that's all the boards I'm going to show you right this week. So, gosh, I almost ate up a half an hour just talking about my board. So, looks like we got 5 people here. Thanks for everybody showing up. I really do appreciate it. If anybody's got any questions, just fire them away in the chat window, and I'll answer any kind of questions you guys got. Feel free to fire away anytime I'm talking. Fire away questions. I don't mind being distracted and answering questions. The mini boards, man. It's amazing how popular those darn things are getting. It's crazy. Like I'm getting a lot of inquiries for the mini boards, and especially the little mini Tombstone. It's a fun little board, man. I mean, like the regular shaped minis that I've made, like like the one I showed you a little while ago, like my little mini here. But my modern like this is my first template of mini. I realized that after riding this one, it needed to be a little bit wider. So my new templates for just the standard Boog shape is actually a little bit wider than this, and I'm doing 24 versus 22 as well. But the new regular shaped Boog mini Boog it's a great shape, and I really like it. I think it's definitely an improved template over the one that I have. I don't really have that right now just because I've been making the mini tombstone. Like, so I knew that after I'd made a few of the regular shaped bugs there, and then people were starting to hit me up for custom ones. And a few people had asked for maybe a mini tombstone. So, that one was always in the back of my mind. I needed to create a little a template to do mini tombstones. So, like, this is the one I just finished. So it's basically like the tombstone shape, but it's a 24-inch mini tombstone, right? And it's kind of like it has a 3-channel, a 3-scallop, kind of like mine, but you can see how much wider, at least the tombstone one is than mine. I mean, it's like, it's got to be 1.5 inches wider probably, and it's at least 1 inch longer. So maybe mine's a 23, and this is not 22. So I know this one's 24. But yeah, I mean, once I made the first couple, one or two of the tombstone shaped ones, I really haven't even got anybody wanting to order a regular shaped one. Everybody wants the little tombstones. It's really a cool shape. So I finished this one. This one's going to Australia, which is pretty cool. And I got another one here that I got two, but this one's going to a guy down in Southern California. I just kind of started it. It's a V-tail, single to double concave, and it'll have the deck groove or the thumb groove. But you can see, this one's got slick mesh too. You can see the mesh layer that's in there, and you can obviously see the waffle-ish pattern that happens because of the mesh. Yeah, that's a cool board. And like I said, when I go to make these minis, I basically take a full-size piece of core that I make a full-size board out of, but I can get 3 mini cores out of one full-size core. So the pink one that I did, pink and black one I just showed you, was the first piece out of that. This is the second piece, and then since I had a third piece, I was like, I might as well just make a third one. So this one probably just put up on the website. It's a double crescent. There's a full crescent on the top, but it like fades to a 2 crescent off the bottom, and it's just a full double concave almost all the way through this one. I didn't pull the rib back and make it single in the front. It's just kind of almost 2 all the way out through the double concave. So that'll be a fun one. I don't even know what colors I'm going to put on the top of this yet. I'm still kicking it around. But this one will go up on the website. But man, I have another guy in Hawaii that I guess he rides out on the North Shore a lot, and hit me up, and he has quite a few minis, but he's like, man, I want to go ahead and get order a regular mini from you. So I made that one to him and sent it over to him, and I know he's ridden it down around the North Shore, but he just hit me up, and he has like a mini bend board, and he's going to send it to me, and he wants me to replicate it to make him another one. But it'd be cool too to get the bend mini, and I'll be able to template that out too, and maybe have that kind of shape as another option for a mini as well. But I'm getting to the point where I almost have as many mini templates as I do like full size board templates, because they're so popular. It's just crazy the popularity of these little things, and pretty specialized what conditions you can actually use them in. But man, I'm telling you, they're a blast. They're a lot of fun. And like I said, I'm getting a lot of inquiries about them, so it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to see, and it's nice for me to build something a little bit different instead of it's always, another 42, another 42, another 42, another 42-inch board. It's just, it's nice to challenge myself to do something a little bit different, and I'm always about that. I want to be challenged and try different things and experiment with stuff. That's what this whole thing's about, is what can we do? What's possible? Well, let's push the boundaries of what people think is possible with bodyboard design. That's what I want to do, and that's why I did all this. Is that just I wanted to push progression of the board designs. Gosh, if like I said, anybody's got any questions, fire away, man. I'm just sitting here rambling on. Let's see. After this, I don't really have a lot of boards on order right now. It's kind of nice. I actually have a couple construction projects I'm going to be doing for my neighbors over the next 2 weeks. So it might be a little bit of slow times for bodyboard production, just because I gotta help my neighbor out with a big deck job at his house, and it's going to pay me really good. So I might as well do that and make some money, and then take all that money and dump it back into materials for the business. So that's my plan. I'm pretty much out of black skin right now too. I need to get another big roll of black skin, and they are not cheap, but I got to. So this little side job will help me get some income to be able to dump it back into another roll of black skin. And that's going to happen. I want to get. I'm just about out of white skin as well. Black and white's just about. I mean, black's damn near gone. Everything's gone. White, I probably have 4 or 5 more deck skins, and then the white's gone as well. Still have plenty of red and the blue and the teals and the pinks and like I got a lot of cool other colors, but some of the basic colors I'm running low on. But in the next month or so, I'll definitely be getting that all figured out. Yeah, it's just all fun. Oh, hey, Bill, what's up, man? The mini. Well, the mini, like I said, I explained a little bit. The mini boards are they're just almost like a little kickboard. You can't really ride on top of them like you can like a full size board. You kind of almost sometimes have to have it out in front of you, and you're like almost half body surfing, and then the board's almost just like out in front of you, kind of planing. I've seen some guys that you can kind of try to get your elbow up and on the board and ride it like what you would ride a normal bodyboard, but it's a totally different riding style, and you need a wave with a little bit more push, just because you got so much drag because there's not a board that's planing for you. So you're gonna have a lot more drag. So you need a wave that maybe has a little bit more energy into it, just so you can actually ride and travel some distance. Unless it's a shore pound wave, and then that thing's just gonna dump, and you're just gonna sit in underneath it and get barreled, and it's gonna close out on you. That's what a lot of the guys do it. But as far as like what's the difference between like maybe a mini board and a regular board, well, I build them exactly the same way. I use the exact same materials on the little ones as I do on the big ones. So as far as materials go, stringers, skins, I use Surlyn bottom slick. I mean, that's a Surlyn bottom slick mini is in the bodyboard world is a pretty rare thing. Most manufacturers who are making mini boards cut every corner possible when they're making a mini board, and I build them exactly the same way as all my customs. So they're all the details that I put in the big boards are the same details I'm putting in small boards. Tail designs, channels, deck contours. I do all of it just on a smaller scale. Adam, you're asking about V-tails. When a board has a V-tail on it, do you measure the board from the center of the V-tail? About as far, like how far you'd actually be down into the board, and then like, so basically, you're going to start off with the square tail. Oh, well, let's just look at this. This one has a V-tail, so let's just look at this. So yeah, it's after I laminate the slick on, before I cut the tail shape, it's squared, right? So then I sit and lay out, I find where the center line's at, and then I know like a mini's not as wide, so you don't have to be as far off the tail. Like on a normal board, I usually do about 1 3/4 inches on a full size board. It's kind of my normal number for a V-tail. Yeah, so you're just going to find where the center line's at, and then measure from the center line into the board how deep you want the V-tail to cut. So yeah, I love V-tails, man. If I wasn't riding all the scallop tail boards, I'd be riding V-tail boards. I think it's a great board. A lot, like if you've been watching the previous Boog Chats and seen all of my early tubes boards, they're all V-tails, man. I V-tail single concaves. I just love that setup. In the early days, it was my go-to for years. For quite a few years of my custom boards in the early days were all V-tail single concave. But yeah, as evolution goes on and I try different things, I learned that the scallop tails and the multi-channeled systems they just perform better than a single concave V-tail. Although, like my Tombstone is still a V-tail, but it has a single, double to quad channel. But it's still a V-tail. But I really, like I said, I still love a V-tail. I think it's a great performing tail. I like it because it's got this the center V, like on a full size board. Back in the day, I would always, like, when I'm duck diving, I just stick one of my knees like right in the center part of this, and it's like a way to lock one of your knees in. When you're on a full crescent tail, you can do it in the center part, but it doesn't really lock you into this little point because it's a more gentle arc. So your knee can slide around a little bit more on an arced tail, or than if you have this little inner little crotch that you can dive your knee into when you're duck diving. So yeah, V-tails are rad. I love them. Looney's asking, what do I think about wide points for DK boards? Okay, yeah, well, wide points for DK boards, we can talk about that a little bit. Well, wide points are usually further back on DK boards, closer to the mid part of the board. So, if you got a 42-inch board, you can be in that 20-inch range or 21-inch range, and because that's about halfway through the board to where it's the widest, right? And then it all basically is based off your pivot points. So you know where your knee is, where your knee is at, and where your foot's at. Like it don't, because if you have a symmetrical board versus asymmetrical, then it's a whole other ball of game. But if you have a symmetrical board, basically you want to take a look at where your knee's at and where your foot's at, and basically maybe the mid part of the wide point should be almost kind of in between those two things, so you're getting as close as you can to both of the pivot points. That's the thing why like prone boards have a wide point that's usually further forward, because all your weight's on your elbows, and right about where your elbows are at is about where you want the wide part of a prone board. It's really kind of the sweet spot, because that's the part you're pivoting off of and rotating around for turning. Same thing on a DK board, because your pivot points are further back because you're on your knees or your foot. Your all your weight and the pivot points are further back on the board, so that pushes the wide point back on the DK board. Anything over 23, what, I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Looney. Are you talking about maybe width? 23 inches wide? Is that what you're talking about? Oh yeah. So okay, wide points. Wide points are I can only do about 23.5-inch wide on my laminator. My laminator is designed to not really do much over 24 inches, and the limiting factors really are the skins, because you got to on a deck like the, if you got a 24-inch wide board, you got to think about, okay, say like if this is 24 inches wide at the wide point here, I got to laminate a skin over the top of this board. But if the skin's only 24 inches wide, by the time I laminate across there, and then I got to bend the skin over the chine here, sometimes it's not enough. Or if the board isn't perfectly centered with the deck skin when it gets laminated on, and something's just a little bit shifted side to side, you got to have some extra deck skin when you wrap this piece over, so it's overhanging, and then you go back and trim it off the razor knife. So it basically is, if you only have 24-inch wide skin, you can't really make even a 24-inch wide board. It needs to be about 23.5, so that way you can roll it over the chine and then still have something to cut off. And that's just how I design my laminator. That I can get skins that are a little bit wider than 24 inches, but my sheet feeder for my laminator, I have it all set up for 24-inch skins. I just was, and it's not adjustable. I just have it set up for 24-inch skins. So all the skins I laminate are, whether it's the bottom slicks or the deck skins, they're all 24-inch wide sheets. So that's kind of the thing. Yeah, 23 for a wide point is a pretty wide board, but some bigger guys, you got really wide shoulders, and you got that's the thing, is that width of a board, depending on what it is. I mean, like if it's a DK board, sometimes DK boards tend to be a little bit wider too, just so you get a little bit more volume in the board, and you get a little bit more float. You got to put it, because you're up on top of a DK board versus having when you're proning, like half your body's off the back of you, or at least a third of it's off the back of the board, But when you're DKing, all your weight is up on top of the deck of the board, so it's going to want to sink. You're going to want to sink that board more than if you were proning it, because your weight's more spread out when you're proning. So you got to need more volume in a DK board just automatically because of that reason. And now how do you get that? You got to, a wider point. Sometimes a wider wide point is a way to do that. You got to put volume in. You can go thicker, obviously, or wider. That's the way you put, or longer. Those are the ways to put more volume into a board. Yeah. There's a few boards that are definitely in the 23-inch range. It's just the big boy boards. The bigger the guy is, bigger guys are. Especially like I said, I built this one board for a guy down in Pismo Beach, which is like the next town over from me here in California. The guy, oh my gosh, he came by the shop. He was just a mountain of a man. I mean, I'm 6'4", 180, and this guy walked up, and I was like, Holy cow. I don't look up to too many people. And he walked in, and the guy was probably like 6'8" or 6'9", and he was, 3 something, man. He's a big dude. And I mean, I made him a 2 3/4 inch thick. It was 23-inch wide. I want to say it was 43 or 44-inch long. I mean, it was a high volume board. It's basically as wide as I could make it and almost as long as I could make it. And I can make boards up 3 to 3 1/4 inch thick, but man, it's just there is a breaking point with thickness. It's just you're shooting yourself in the foot after a certain thickness of a board. You can't even get your hands around the rails. It's stupid. The 2 and 3. But once again, if you have big, massive, you did like that dude, he had these massive hands. So his hands going around the rail, he's going to be able to hold on to it. Where if you're a smaller person, you're just not going to be able to hold on to those rails because they're so big. Well, yeah, Looney, my tombstones definitely they're on the wider side of life anyway. They I don't know. My personal tombstone's a 42-inch, and it's only I want to say around 22 inches. But when you get up into the 43 and the 44-inch models of my tombstones, the width starts to push out about 23 inches. So those bigger like a 44-inch tombstone is probably going to be in that 23-inch range, at least 22.5 to 23-inch. It's a great way to. I mean, the tombstones are great just because there's so much planing surface on them, and you get that by the width, and pushing that wide way forward too, and a really wide tail. So there's between the wide point and the tail, there usually is only about a 1/2 inch difference. On a normal prone board or a DK board, it's tails are usually pulled in even more. So what that does is it makes for a really straight rail line on the tombstones. And I take the wide point and it goes, it's like at 13 inches. It's like even in front of where your elbows are at for sure. It's way forward, and it just makes for a really straight rail line. And I'm telling you, as soon as you get going on this thing and catch a wave and you turn it and get it on rail and sink that rail in, because it's so straight and there's hardly any curve in it, it just takes off like a rocket ship. I rode my tombstone this morning for 3 hours. I absolutely loved the board. It was probably like 3 to 5 foot out front, and there's barrels and everything out front. But the way that board is just amazing. I love my tombstone. It's number 26. It's been around for over 4 years. I've had so many sessions on it. It's stupid. It's a great little board, man. Like I said, I ride it anytime it's like, kind of on the smaller side. I've never leashed it either, so it's leashless, and it's just an amazing board. It's got a little bit of creasing, a little bit of elbow creasing, and a little bit of rocker just because it's a little bit on the older side, but I love the board. I ride it in any of the smaller conditions around here. Once I start getting, head closer to head high, I want my regular board and a leash, just because I don't want to chase it around. I only had to swim after it once this morning in 3 hours. I lost it once in 3 hours. So today, but yeah, I think it's good to go leashless sometimes too. I think people need to test themselves. It teaches you a lot about board control and not just ditching your board anytime you can, because if you don't have a leash, there's going to be consequences. You cannot ditch your board. So it really is kind of good sometimes to just go. I encourage everybody to try it on just go on a smaller day. You don't have to go on the big crazy days when you're going to be doing a ton of duck diving and you're going to get pounded. I mean, you need a leash in those conditions. Come on. But in the smaller days, I encourage people just take your leash off your board and try to go out for a session and hold on to that thing the whole time and try not to lose it. I think it's a fun way to challenge yourself to you got to hold on to your board, and you can't put yourself into positions where you just normally, I'm kind of impact zone, so I'm just going to ditch my board and swim down. Also, how you end a wave. You can't just bail your board at the end of a wave and swim underneath. You got to kick out proper, or you got to straighten out and hold on to it. It's a whole nother way. And by forcing you to do that, it'll make you a better rider. I guarantee it, because the more times you do that without a leash, what you'll find is that when you're out there on the heavier days, you put yourself in way better positions, so you're not getting pounded. It's going to teach you not to put yourself in bad positions, and it'll teach you how to control your board. At the end of a wave, you can't just ditch it. You're going to have to maybe kick out a little sooner than what you maybe would normally do, or you got to, hold on to it through a wipeout. You got to bear hug that thing because you don't want to go swimming after it. And if you're in a beach break condition, you're right on or a shore break. I mean, sure, it'd be super easy to go without a leash because you just run right up the sandbank, grab your board, and you're right back out in the lineup in 20 feet. But if you're swimming 100 yards out to sea, getting to the outside of a beach break or a reef break, you don't want to be losing your board and swimming after it a lot. It's a huge energy killer. So, but I encourage everybody to try to go without a leash. I don't know if people out there do that much. Anybody out there ever try to do go without a leash? Or that may be my question for everybody that's listening right now. Adam's asking some stuff about V-tails, so I'm just reading his comment here, or his question. He's asking, does the V-tail make a difference in the way you ride? If it's a 42-inch V-tail, will it ride like a 41-inch because of the V? No, I don't think so. I think because your rail length is still a 42, and I don't think you're going to notice a big difference of how it rides in length, because you're talking basically, because when you're riding, I mean, some people ride and they just go straight, but most of us, when we're riding a proper wave, we're going to go left or right once the wave gets going and is shouldering in a direction. But when you're doing that, you're putting a board on rail, right? So how the tail's cut up into there, I mean, if you look at a clip crescent or just a full crescent, this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of an inch and a half on this clip crescent that's right back here. And that's going to be about the same as the full crescents and the scallops that I do, as far as like from the points to how far it cuts back into here, right? So, I mean, you're talking about like even just the shape of this tail versus the V tail. I mean, how much more is here versus a V tail, like a planing area, and how is it going to change how the tail rides and holds or feels? The thing about a clip crescent tail is it has these little clips here, and it makes for really side slippy types of things. But as far as length goes on a V-tail, a 42 is going to feel like a 42, or 41 is going to feel like a 42, whether it's a clip crescent or a V-tail or a full crescent or a scalloped. It's all going to feel the same because the rail length is still the same length. Now, what I feel about clip crescents is that they're kind of side slippy because of this flat area, and I've talked about this a lot in some of the other previous ones. Is that the tail corner, because of this clip, doesn't, when you sit back on the tail corner and you want it to bite and hold, this tends to be a little bit side slippy. It'll take and the tail will start side slipping out on you a little bit. And if you have a V-tail or any type of other tail that exits to a point versus something that's clipped off, or a flat tail or anything like that, this tail corner like this is going to bite and hold. When you're sitting back on that tail at a point in the water, it's going to bite and hold, and it's not going to side slip out on you like what a clip crescent will. So, I mean, it will. A V-tail is a great tail because of that. And that, like I said, in the early days of my V-tails, that's the big lesson I learned. As soon as I went from a clip crescent tail to a V-tail, I never wanted to ride a clip crescent ever again. In fact, I don't even really like building them anymore, but I do them because people want them and they're durable, man. That's the thing about these clip crescent can take a shot on this point versus a board that's like this. If the board gets thrown over the falls and it goes tail first, like right, on this tail corner, goes right into the sand over the falls on a 6-footer, it's gonna, you're gonna have some tail crushing, and because it just can't handle the impact on these corners like a clip crescent can. Clip crescents are durable. That's why, and they're easy to make. And that's why it's the most popular tail out there, is that they're for manufacturing. That's why you see the most of them, is because they're real easy to make. They can make them really fast, and they're durable as heck, and they can handle the impact. So it leads to less customer service issues down the line. That's why you see so many clip crescent tails, is because they're durable, and they lead to less customer service. Hey, Phil, good to see you. Phil's got a question here. I had a few leashes break on me when surfing on the outside. No fun swimming all the way in. Yeah. There's nothing. I got. If you've been riding at any time of time, you've broken a leash, and you know what that feels like. It's Yeah, especially the further you are out to sea, boy. I've had a few conditions like you're talking about outer reefs. That's nightmarish if you're not with some people. If you're out there by yourself and you snap your leash and you lose your board on an outer reef day on the North Shore, wow, that's a long, lonely swim all the way back in. I've had a couple leashes break on me out here at my beach break, and some bigger days. Yeah, there's nothing worse. I have this one day. The waves were just pumping. It's well overhead, just lining up crazy good, and I could see a set was coming. I'm like, okay, I start scratching for the horizon. Go up and over the first one. And I'm like, oh shit, second one's coming. Okay, get over that one, and the third one is just like, oh, I'm gonna die. And it's breaking way outside of me, and it's you got like a 6 to 8 foot wall of whitewater coming at you, and you're like, okay, well, do I hold on to my board or do I ditch? And I ditched. It's on me, but that's the situation. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna ditch and I'm gonna swim down because it's a mountain of whitewater coming at me. As soon as I go under, I go to I ditch my board, swim underneath, and I go to bicep leash, go to pull my board through, and you feel that pop. Oh my God. It's like under this huge wall of whitewater. I feel my leash pop off my arm. And then it's, okay, you're surfacing, going to come up after that, which is fine. You're going to surface. I'm made under all the whitewater, no problem. But board's long gone. I'm like 150 yards out to sea, and there are still more sets coming. And then you pop up and you're like, okay, well, now I don't have a board. I'm way the hell out here. But the waves were pumping. I took a couple more on the head and swam all the way in, found my board, ran up to the house, switched the leash out, and was back out there. But man, it's a lonely feeling when you break your leash and you're way out there. Yeah, Nick, still haven't plugged for fun. That's good to hear. I know you guys ride some stuff that's pretty close to shore, so like I said, I encourage people to try to go leashless. It's a fun experiment, and it teaches you a lot of really good lessons to do that every once in a while. Oh man, Looney, yeah, that would suck to watch your board just get stuck in a current and go out to sea, and you're maybe somebody will find it someday, but it ain't gonna be you. You gotta give one to the gods, I guess, every once in a while. The sea gods. Just if you never find that board. Hey Colby, you're asking, hey man, what's the best board for North Florida and 6 foot chop? Well, oh geez, that's a pretty open. I need so much more information if I wanted to try to recommend it. For starters, do you prone or DK? I got there's like a list of questions that I go through with my customers when somebody approaches me. The recommendations for me have always been a difficult thing, and I've talked about this with people before because what's right for me may not be for you, and I know what works for me, but I don't necessarily know what works for you. So but I understand how other people ride, and I've been building enough boards now that I can usually, once I understand how you ride and the types of waves you ride and how you want your board to flex or how you want it to track or do you need it to hold? Do you want it to be loose? Do you want it to be stiff? And there's a lot of things we got to go through to try to figure out what would be the best board for you. It's just a series of questions I usually get through with people, and I, how big are you? It's impossible for me to recommend a board for any conditions without knowing rider size and how big are you? Do you prone? Do you DK? Do you do both? There's a lot of information I need to be able to do some kind of recommendation. Yeah, Phil, definitely. Pop your leash. What's cool about bodyboarding? If you break your leash, is you got fins on. So you're already ahead of the game right there. You're going to be able to swim, and because you just roll over on your back and just start kicking towards shore, and then you wait for a wave to come and roll over and body surf some whitewater, and you make it in. That's how you get in when you break your leash. But the fact that we got the surfer breaks his leash, you got booties on, man. it's going to be a way harder swim to get in, or if you're if you're surfing warm water, you're not wearing booties, but you're barefoot. It's a way tougher swim to get in when you're barefooted versus that's one of maybe another advantage we have is if we do break a leash, we got our fins on our feet. Yeah. Well, Basso for Life's asking if if anybody's ever done the Wahoo sealed leash plug. Yeah, in fact, I've installed a couple of those on boards for people. And I have my screen printer guy who I just built that to the tombstone I just finished of Anxious Energy Jim Ledbetter. That's all he swears by that Yahoo or Wahoo leash plug. Let's see, I might even have. Yeah, this is the package. It's already gone, but this is the thing that he's talking about right here. The leash plug's already gone because it went into a board. But you get a little tube of sponge res, and then this little cutter that it's like a little hollow tube that you shove down into the deck of the board, and then you have to hog it all out to put this. And then you sponge res in the plug into the deck of the board, and then you don't have to plug. You don't have to drill a big hole or push a hot screwdriver or whatever you're going to do to get a leash plug all the way through your board. I've done this a few times for people, and Jim swears by it. He said he's never had one of these things pull out of the deck of his board, but he doesn't ride crazy heavy waves. So I'm still a little hesitant. I mean, if you're riding big, massive double overhead North Shore waves, you might have some issues with that plug system. I don't know, man. Like I said, I've never heard of it failing, but I have my concerns once the waves get serious, whether it's gonna, and not to mention, you do have to hog that hole out of the deck of your board. So it's going to, you're compromising the deck of the board maybe a little bit more than just by putting a drill bit through a board or a hot screwdriver. So yeah, definitely. I've done it a few times, Wabasa. So yeah, if you have an old board, maybe try it out on an old board, just to see how you like it, how easy it is to do. It's not that difficult of an install. Like I said, it comes with all the little tools you need, maybe just another little razor knife to chip all the foam and stuff out after you kind of hog the hole out with that little pipe thing. You just go through and chip out a lot with like a razor knife or something like that, and then set the plug down in there with the sponge res and let it dry for 24 hours. It's a pretty easy install. Thanks for all the questions, guys. This is great. I love it. I love the questions and the comments and the feedback. I try to come in with some topics and stuff, but I really want to interact with people and answer questions about different things and stuff that people don't get a chance. You see all this stuff, but you don't really get a chance to ask me questions about this feature or that feature. And that's kind of why I want to do this stuff. Colby, you're asking me what's the fastest board on the market at the moment? My boards. Anything multi-channel, man. I think that multi-channel boards. Now, okay, I've talked about this before. Speed comes from the wave, not the board. Okay, so speed, you can only go so fast on a 1 foot wave, and you can go a hell of a lot faster on a 60-foot wave, right? Just because of the nature of gravity, right? And slope, right? The bigger the wave, the more energy it is, the faster you're going to go. Now, from that, how does a board respond to the speed that the wave gives you, right? So, I mean, it's also important to have a fast, if you have a small, soft, dribbly wave, but you need your board, you need to catch it. Like I said, my tombstone boards are amazing on small condition waves, man. They're just wave catching machines because of the planing surface on the bottom of the wave or the bottom of the board. And also, when you're paddling it, it gets up and trims faster and it's kind of like a longboard versus a shortboard. That's how I call my tombstone my longboard. That's usually the board I ride when I see everybody's riding longboards out front of my beach break. I'm usually riding my tombstone instead of my regular board because I just think it's a fast board because it has so much planing surface. Okay, so the one thing about a fast board is it's got, when you want a fast board, okay, well, speed comes from the wave. So now all of a sudden I'm riding a pipeline. Okay, so you drop in on that and you're just going Mach 20. Well, how does your board handle that speed? If you have a flat bottom board with a clip crescent tail, you're going to be side slipping all over the place with that much speed and power and energy. And so in order to stop that side slipping, what you have to do, because you're now all of a sudden with all that energy and speed, you're losing control, right? Control for me is probably more important than speed because you can only go so fast before you lose control, right? So the thing is how can a board handle the speed and not lose control? And the multi-channel systems and channel derails, proper tail designs with the channel designs, it has to be a cohesive thing. You can't just be like, oh, I want try, I just finished this one. This is a fairly good example. Is that this is a clip crescent tail, right? But it has a 3-channel. It's a tri-channel kind of board, right? But there's no cohesiveness between how the water sheds off this tail with the ribs and the tail design. It's just like you got 2 ribs just exiting out through a crescent. Right? There's no cohesiveness with how this is working. It's going to channel and track okay, but it's going to be side slippy because it's a clip crescent tail, right? But now on the flip side of that, now you can take a look at like this board. You got now all of a sudden you have all these deep channels that run through the bottom of the board that will now all of a sudden when you're going faster, all these channels are going to grab and track and hold your direction, and you're going to side slip less because you got more channels on the bottom of the board, right? And then, so what the 3 to 6 channels are really good about is that they start off at a wider 3, and then they fade into from a 1 channel into 2 channels, right? So what that does is it creates more surface area and even more bite through the back half of the board because of the extra little rib that it fades into, right? So you get even more bite and hold. And what also, as the water's fading through this channel and then hitting this other bump, what I think it does is it creates just a little bit of lift in the tail as well. So what that does is anything that lifts your tail and pushes you forward is going to make you go faster, right? So not only is the thing creating bite and hold, it's also forcing you maybe just to ever so slightly to lean forward, and that's going to make you go faster. Okay, so then once see this tail now, if you look at this is a 6 scallop tail on a 3 to 6. All right, so all of these points line up with every single rib. So now what happens is these little points, when you sit back on the tail and maybe you're cranking through a turn, or you're sitting back on the tail and digging the rail in to hold on a steeper wave face, all of this stuff bites and holds, and there's just I'm not saying there's not zero side slip, but compared to like a flat bottom board with a clip crescent tail, it's just going to bite and hold its line better, and you're going to have less side slip, which means you have more control, which means you have more control, you can go faster, right? So what's fast? Fast comes from having good controls. Speed comes from the wave. These are just my own personal opinions about things, but it's just, I think that you can only go so fast without losing control. So the goal is to be able to maintain control at a very high speed, depending on what's going on. I love channeled rails too. I think, this board has the rounded one-piece rail, but as soon as you start channeling out a face of a rail of a board, you can kind of see this one has my boards, most of my personal prone boards all take and channel out the face of the rails through the back, like 18 inches of the rail. Standard rails up through the front, but as it goes towards the back, I'll channel this out. And also, what I do is I take the front edges of the boards up the rail edge, and I really sand and round that off. And then as it fades out through the back of the tail, it really sharpens up. Like I keep it almost as sharp as I can as it exits. So what happens then when you're over and you're on rail and you're trimming and you're going left or right, that just bites and holds into the rail, into the wave face so much better than just a regular flat rail. It really does add bite and hold, which means more control, which means you can go faster, right? So what's the fastest board on the market? I don't know, man. The fastest board is the one that has the most control. And I think the boards that I'm doing, control is a huge thing for me. So I'd say, some of my boards, obviously there's some things that Mez is doing and stuff. They're just the best boards I can build. There's a lot of other really good stuff out there. So hope that answers a little bit of that question. Looney, yeah, Colby, hit me up on Instagram. I'm always willing to bounce some messages back and forth if you got questions. You can always hit me up on Instagram. Just direct message me and I'll get back to you. Looney, yeah, dude, this is what we're doing right now. We're talking story right now. But obviously in person would be great. And I do get to the islands a lot, so I'm sure we'll cross paths at some point. I really want to have the next time I'm on Oahu, I really want to have a town day where I get a bunch of guys together in town. I'm always out on the North Shore, and I don't really get to town that much. And I really want to have a town day where we almost have like a little Ronin meetup in town somewhere with some guys, maybe at Walls or Ala Moana or something like that. Shoot, you're on Kauai. I've never been to Kauai. I'd love to come to Kauai. So that Kauai and the Big Island are two I haven't been to yet. I usually go Maui or Oahu. So, yeah, Phil. I still haven't got to meet Phil. I made him a couple boards, and I just missed you the last trip I made to Oahu last year. We weren't able to hook up. But I said that I always miss somebody when I come to Oahu. I can only do so much, and I tend to get stuck in my little rut staying with Jordan these days, and we just do our thing and hang out. But I definitely want to get one day, the next trip that I get to Oahu, we're going to do a meetup where I'm going to put it out on social media, and we can have a day where everybody gets together and we got some cool paddle out with a bunch of Ronin boards. That'd be a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah, Nick, definitely. Nick's saying that the way that I plane my noses down, or I do the nose cut on the underneath side of my board. I've talked a little bit about this in the past too, but it really does make for my as far as a speed of a board. Okay, maybe we'll get back to the little speed question a little bit here. Is that a lot of boards brands out there, you'll pick up their boards and you'll see that how this cut is through the nose, the underneath part of the nose right here, right? Well, yeah, nose rocker. Okay, well, there's two things. There's what I call nose rocker, and then there's nose cut, right? So I know when you're talking on surfboard rocker, it's usually you're talking about the whole rocker of the board, and it's usually the bottom is really what when you're getting into like nose rocker or tail rocker of all this stuff for a surfboard. But for a bodyboard, what I call nose rocker is usually on the deck of a board. You can see this board actually has just a little bit of what I call nose kick in it. So I just take it in the front part of the nose and I kick the nose up just a little bit. So it adds like a little bit of a nose bar when you're proning and your hands don't slip off the nose of your board a little bit. It really is a cool effect just to put a little bit of nose kick right up in the front part of the board right there instead of having it just straight flat all the way through here. But the nose cut now is the part that gets shaped off of the core that makes like the water enters the channels in the bottom of the board, right? Especially like when you're leaning forward. Okay, but if you look at my boards, any of my boards, and you can see that it's the saw that's right behind me. That's what this big thing is back here. That big saw is a band saw that swings horizontally, and it's you can see there's a pipe that's like right there and runs all the way through over there. And this whole thing swings, right? And then that thing swings on a radius, and it's a horizontal bandsaw. It shapes this cut off of the nose of the core of the board before the slick gets laminated on. And there's some sanding and stuff that happens a little bit off after that, but that does the main cut. I mean, so a lot of guys will just hand shape all of this off, but and then there's some other router methods, and there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but the most efficient way is this saw, hands down. I mean, I can do one of these. I can shape a nose in 10 seconds. Seriously, like 20 seconds max from the time I flip it on, the time I make all the cut, and then 20 seconds versus something that, if I hand shape this cut off of the nose, it would take me, 5 to 10 minutes maybe, just to get it all nice and clean and sanded. And from the cut to the little bit of sanding I have to do after, I can do it in 2 minutes, 3 minutes max to shape the nose off. And how much gets shaped off of my boards is different than most of the other brands out there. Most of the other brands, if you look from like the nose up to where it resolves flat into the board, is usually about 6 inches, right? So like my boards, what they do, my boards cut back into it 9 inches, which means it's a softer radius and it's not as blunted off in the front part of the nose. It does make for a thinner nose, like when you're holding on to it. That's what some guys have said, oh man, your noses feel too thin. Yeah, they are a little bit thinner feeling, like, or when you're grabbing up and around the edges of the nose, is just because there's more of that gets shaped off. And what then my thinking is that instead of having it as blunt and only 6 inches back instead of the 9 inches that I do, is that it makes a softer entry for the water into the bottom of the board, especially when you're leaning forward on the board. When you're leaning forward on the board, what it does is it doesn't push as much water. So like if it was a softer or a more blunted off nose, as soon as you lean forward, what that does is that blunted nose pushes water and it slows you down. And then having a softer, more gentle rocker or nose cut on the bottom of the board, it makes for a softer entry when you're, and it pushes less water. So when you're leaning forward, you actually can get more speed because you're pushing less water. That's one of the really good things, and maybe one of the reasons why people say my boards are kind of fast. That could be one of the factors for sure. I mean, and I noticed that's what you were saying, Nick, is that it does make a difference. And until you ride and experience one of my boards, you don't really know what I'm talking about. maybe that is a selling point for some people, man. Maybe I want to try that just for that one thing. But yeah, my noses are shaped differently than most of the ones out there because they're usually in that 6-inch range versus the 9-inch range back. Colby, you're asking about Wi-Fi and fishtails. I've got a buddy board who could definitely use the tail of the bottom turns. Yeah, Wi-Fi's are pretty fast from what I haven't ridden one though. I've built quite a few of them for people, but I haven't really ridden one myself. I don't know. I've got a lot of people really like those Wi-Fi tails, man. I think that they might be a little bit loose though, like because it gets back to how the water sheds off the tail, and then that's also another situation where because of the nature of a Wi-Fi tail, the rails are shorter than the board length. So that's where a tail kind of feel like, oh gosh, I got a 42-inch long board, but the rail length's only 41 and a half. So definitely it's going to feel when you get it on rail and you're going, on rail might feel more like a 41 and a half versus a 42 because the tail's not really as engaged, because you're mostly in the rail, right? So you just have less rail in the water, so it's going to feel like a shorter board. But I've heard they're really fast. So, and if you have a proper quad setup, I think a quad bottom on a Wi-Fi is a great setup, just because of the nature. It's a cohesive channel system, and because you got basically 4 points that happen with the Wi-Fi tail, or you got 3 basically, because you got the point back like this, right? So when you put 3 ribs in there and then you get 4 channels, it works. It actually is a very good cohesive channel and tail design. So that as far as a channel design that would go with the Wi-Fi, definitely go with the quad. I mean, I think, and that's that. If you've seen last few I've done, they probably are quad channels. Well, thanks, Nick. Yeah. Yeah. See, I mean, Nick's ridden. I mean, he has a DK board. I built him, and he's ridden a few of Sterling's prone boards, so he knows. And that's somebody else. That's not even me just saying, yeah, they're the fastest boards I've ever ridden. So, and he's not the only person I've heard it from. I just don't like to, brag about any of that kind of stuff. I know it works, and I know that these channel and tail systems work, and they add control, and that means you can go faster. So, and they don't really. I mean, you're not losing any speed or anything because of all those extra channels or tail. I mean, there's no speed loss. All it is control gaining. So they are great systems. They go fast as long as the wave's powerful. If it's a 1-foot dribbler, you're not going to be going fast. You can't go any faster than the wave pushes you. That's just the reality of it. Doesn't matter how good the board is or how many channels you have. If it's a 1-foot dribbler, you're not going to go fast. Doesn't matter how much you spent or how many channels are on your board or what kind of tail you have. It doesn't matter. It's just the wave doesn't have the energy. Yeah, Phil. Yeah. That V channel had me pretty curious from Gato too. I've seen him make a few of those boards. I have a lot of respect for Gato. I mean, I could make one of those and try it out, but you got to leave some things for people. I don't want to see Gato making scallop 3 to 6s either. But if he wanted to, I'd be flattered because if you want to build a board designed or like some of my boards, I get flattered by that. It's like, well, if you got a customer who wants to pay you to build something like that, build it for him. I don't care. I think it's really cool, and then it pushes that shaper to do something a little outside of his comfort level or something he hasn't done. So I'm all about that, man. Go for it. Yeah. Patent the 3 to 6. My designs and the things that I do, I I don't want to patent them, man. I want them to be open public, a gift to the bodyboard world. I don't care. I don't care about making money, $2 a board off of if Mez is pumping out another brand's boards that has 3 to 6s and a scallop tail, but I'm not getting paid from that. Yeah, I'd be a little bummed if they were being mass produced. But I mean, if it's a custom thing for a customer, and say like for Gato, if somebody in Europe doesn't want to pay for the shipping for me all the way from California, and he just wants to get a scallop tail board, then try it out and see what it's about, and you went to Gato, I would not be upset if Gato did something like that, and I'm sure, on the flip side of that, like Mez isn't probably too stoked I build Y-fly tails. I mean, it's basically him and Todd. I think we just mentioned Todd. Todd Q is still around, I believe, a little bit here and there. I mean, the Quigley boards are still around, and I think they're every once in a while there'll be a batch or something. I don't know. I'm kind of out of the loop with some of the Australian brands. I just don't follow everything, all the brands. I try to follow as many as I can, but there's a few that slip through the cracks. I'm really following the people who really truly shape boards these days, because I think a lot of the Quigley boards are being made in the Mez factory. So I mean, I follow Mez, and I respect the hell out of what that guy does. I have so much respect for him and the volume of what he does, and how many boards that guy makes for the bodyboarding industry. It's a critical thing. But it's just not the way I want to run my business. But I like to follow the guys, like the underground guys, like my friend Andrew in North Carolina, or Blake from Riot, or obviously Gato. Anybody who's shaping boards on a smaller level and more boutique style stuff that's unique and creative. That's the stuff I like to follow and watch. And that's the stuff that inspires me too. Like I love it. I'm all about it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Blake. I've met Blake, and we've had some pretty good conversations. I have a lot of respect for Blake. I'm not sure that he has a laminator. I think that might be one of his big holdups right now, is why he's not pumping out a lot of boards, and he's just doing more of the modifications, because I don't think he can laminate decks and slicks right now. I'm not 100% sure, but the last time I talked to him, I'm not sure he had a full laminator. So that might be holding him up just a little bit by being able to do full custom boards. But the modifications he's been doing is pretty cool. I love to see him taking a board and making it something else. That's kind of cool too. Looney. Yeah, man. Jimmy, I followed everything. Jimmy and Pete here in California are, obviously Jimmy from JL and Pete from Custom X. Those two guys had a huge influence on me, and they're constant inspiration. The things that they do, I watch them. I watch all of what those guys do. Huge inspiration for me. Some of the details and things that Jimmy puts into his boards definitely inspired me. I mean, he's some of the first channeled rails I think I've ever seen. I saw him doing the deck bumps on a DK board that kind of gave me the idea of doing all the traction bumps that I do now. Like I said, I pull ideas from other people, but then I try to take what they did and then build on it, or try to make it my own and do it my own way. So that way I don't feel like I'm totally ripping somebody off. But on the same side of this, is like, it's a good idea. It works. I know it works. Why not incorporate that stuff into it? As long as I'm not going to be stepping on anybody's toes or pissing anybody off. I never would do that. If Mez ever messaged me and goes, "Hey, bro, I'm not too stoked you're doing Y-fly tails. Could you stop doing them?" I would do it, and I would stop doing it in an instant. I don't want to step on any toes or piss any other brands off, because I'm maybe doing something that's kind of theirs. Like the V channels and stuff, like from Gato's V channels, I can make those and experiment with them. But it's a Gato thing. Why would I? People go to him for that channel system. People come to me for the 3 to 6s and the scallops and some other stuff. That it's cool that there's people out there that do different things, and you can get boards from different manufacturers or different shapers. That's the beauty of this thing, is that everybody does things a little bit different, and what my board's might not work for you, and dude, I've always rode JL, or I've always rode Custom X, or I have tubes, or whoever it is. I love those boards, and that I'm going to be brand loyal because they work for me. I respect that. I do. I really do. So yeah, I mean, Yeah, Phil, I don't think he can. I don't know that he has a laminator. He and I have had some chats about my laminator and some of the components of it, but I don't know that he has a laminator. So I don't think that Blake can do deck and slicks and stuff, which is kind of a bummer. You know, the guy's got all the talent and killer ideas in the world. It's just, you know, maybe doesn't necessarily being in Hawaii. It's hard, man. It's trying to be a shaper in Hawaii and get materials and machinery and all that stuff there. It's a whole nother challenge to run a shaping business in Hawaii. And you're not talking about a surfboard business. You're talking about a bodyboard business, and it's a whole nother can of worms. Holy cow! I've been talking for an extra half an hour tonight. Shoots. I didn't look up at the time, and I'm already at 7:30. I was supposed to cut off at 7, but I don't know. Like I said, when the conversation's rolling, I don't mind it going a little long. Looks like we got 7 people here. Thanks for everybody showing up. And then, yeah, it's really cool. All the questions and topics and things we kind of covered tonight. So I don't know, unless there's something major pressing, maybe I'll start to wrap this thing up since I'm already a half hour past what I said I was going to do. And yeah, so man, like I said, thanks for everybody for coming out, and I'm gonna be doing these again. I got more of my personal boards to go through, and like I said, if anybody has any comments or topics they wanted me to cover in the future, comment like down below. If you're watching the replay of this and you didn't get a chance to see it live and you want to ask a question, you can always make comments, and I'll answer the questions through the comments section. If you just comment on the video, it's fine. Or, you know, if you want me to cover a future topic, just tell me what you want me to cover, man. I'll ramble on about whatever people want to hear about or educate people about. So, like I said, thanks again for everybody showing up, and I guess I'll sign off and get some dinner now. So, thanks a lot for the support, and I'll probably see you next week or the week after. Like I said, once or twice a month, I'm going to be doing these things. And I was trying to do them every week for a while, but it was a little bit much, and I don't want to run out of ideas and things. So, yeah, Nick, thanks for showing up, guys. And I guess I'll just sign off and say ciao for now. Thanks a lot. Bye.